Maruti Suzuki's People Technology presents Suzuki Connect with Navigate to Car and many other features.
Watch more, feel more. Dell.
Right then, focus then on India, whose disappointment in the first two games might have somewhat been sweetened by a big win against Afghanistan to at least keep their hopes alive, assuming that New Zealand slip up, which they didn't earlier today against Namibia. In fact, a pretty big win themselves helps Kane Williamson's side's net run rate. Our focus will be on India versus Scotland, which will kick off in about 25 minutes' time. Now, on Virat Kohli's 33rd birthday, he's got a change in fortunes with the coin. He's won a toss. India will be bowling first for the first time in this tournament, and that's where our attention shall lie on. Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by Dell. Peter Borren still here, so too Ajit Agarkar, and it's nice to see Virat Kohli getting one of those tosses, right? He was building up and piling up an abysmal record of those, Ajit. Not like it's any fault of his, but India bowling first today, they take that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been a bit of due around. They have to improve their net run rate, and even though they had a massive win, it's always a little bit tricky when you bat first of how you can control the game in T20 cricket. So, yeah, India's got first thing right. I mean, after that massive win that New Zealand have had, uh, it's a good start. They'll have to play well, uh, but it's a good start.
Yeah, net run rate is what they need to look at as well. But is that now incidental and secondary, Peter? First things first, when you're at Dubai, you simply chase?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of discussion around what to do first if you're trying to improve your net run rate, and obviously India need to do that. They also have to hope that New Zealand don't beat Afghanistan, which I think that's a 50-50 game on Sunday. So yeah, India, they'll look to obviously restrict Scotland to as few as possible, and we saw it against Afghanistan the other night. This Indian team went perhaps with the shackles off, chasing
Hmm.
whatever they do. It might not take them too long. They're pretty dangerous when it looks like this is that we're basically out of the tournament after the first two games. So now,
Hmm.
I mean, what does Scotland get and what they think they can do to defend? It's going to be a pretty tough ask for the Scottish. But yeah, India will be happy to be bowling, I'd say.
Yeah, it was Kalkotsav said last game that what a time to be a Scottish cricketer, the chance to play teams like New Zealand, India, Pakistan back to back. So he'd be up for this one, even though Scotland are effectively out. They're out of this tournament in the semi-final race. Curious change that India have made. Varun Chakravarti had a bit of a niggle last game, which is how our Ashwin returned to the T20I side. But he's back now, but it's not for Ashwin. It's actually for Shardul Thakur. So India going in with two spinners, Ajit, and what seems to be the only change. Thoughts on that change?
Yeah, I mean, there was a bit of news around that they might play an extra spinner, considering they're playing Scotland as well. Look, I think they've probably picked their best bowler at this stage. And also, it tells you what they think at the moment about Bhuvneshwar Kumar and Shardul Thakur's form. Uh, Bhuvneshwar Kumar certainly is an experienced international campaigner and doesn't find a. Plus, Hardik Pandya bowling a couple of overs will certainly would have played a part in getting the three spinners in, because then effectively it makes three seamers anyway for India. So I quite like the change. Both Ashwin and Varun Chakravarti, if need be, bowl with the new ball and in the power play. So that gets looked after. And Bumrah and Shami are the experienced guys as seamers. So yeah, pretty balanced attack, that one. Hopefully they can get the job done.
Probably player like Varun in a team in an opposition with the batting of Scotland. Peter, we've seen how they struggle against Mujib in the game against Afghanistan. Mystery spin tends to be that much more potent against some of the associate batting lineups.
100%. I thought they'll be a bit disappointed about that, Scotland. Not that Thakur is not he's a proper bowler, but for Scotland, that's a little bit more something they're a little bit more used to, isn't it? And you're right about the Mujib thing. They never would have faced Chakravarti. They would have been more comfortable, I think, with Thakur. It's a good play, a good matchup for India. That I'd say, but I mean, they've got their bases covered, as Ajit says, with Pandya bowling now. They're not missing seam, and for Scotland, they're going to find that a lot tougher. I'd say, yeah, that's it's a tough matchup for them.
Yeah, Scotland also unchanged. So clearly, Josh Davy hasn't recovered. We'll come to that in a moment. Yes, Ajit, please.
Yeah, and I was just saying India still, it's taken a while for India to find what their best 11 is, and which is never a nice thing. Okay, this might be because of they're playing Scotland and they play three spinners, But clearly, it's been a bit of a challenge for Virat with certain or some of the form that some of the players are carrying or lack of it. That he's not been quite sure which 11 to go with. That's never a nice place to start, and
Yeah.
India clearly find themselves behind.
You think, Ajit, that last game where Pant and Pandya got the runs gave him perhaps a little more confidence that perhaps Shardul Thakur's batting is not needed? One of the reasons he keeps getting picked is because he can contribute with that.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt. I mean, for me, Kajul Thakur shouldn't be getting picked because he can bat. If he's a good enough bowler first, that's how he should be getting picked, and his batting should be a bonus. That's why you need if you're playing five bowlers. I mean, I'm not counting Hardik Pandya at the moment. He's only just started bowling. Then you pick your best five bowlers, whoever they are, to get the job done. And that's where India perhaps have. They started with Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, and we knew he wasn't quite up to scratch, and then got Shardul, and Shardul not looked great either. So this looks a much stronger bowling attack, and even if it's Scotland, even if it was one of the slightly more stronger teams or the bigger name teams, if you like, it's still a formidable attack. And the good thing is that
Yeah.
they don't have to bowl second, where they might be a bit more due.
Yeah, fair enough. So much of the focus on India in this tournament has been about their batting, and rightly so. That's what cost them the wins and the points in the first two games. Today gives us a good chance to just discuss the bowling perhaps more in detail, right? They're going to be bowling first for the first time in this tournament. As we just look at their recent record, especially with the new ball, this is something we've come up quite regularly when India play T20 cricket. I remember bringing this similar conversation even in the series against Sri Lanka. They've taken a combined number of 3 wickets in the power play in this tournament. Maybe that New Zealand game you could see that the bowlers were pretty much off, but nothing against Pakistan and two against Afghanistan. As we look at their numbers in T20I since 2020, that's what we see. They still struggle to get wickets in the power play. On 4 occasions. They've got none. On 14 occasions, all they get is one. Now, I wonder if Ajit, you've noticed something about India's inability to get wickets up front in the power play, and is that a concern at all?
It certainly is a concern. I think those numbers tell you the story, and that's what then puts more pressure on the guys to follow. A lot of the times they haven't started with Bumrah, which they've started doing now, which certainly helps. You want your best bowler at least to bowl one over up front and early in the first couple of overs, which they don't seem to do regularly. Even his franchise don't seem to do that regularly. I mean, the couple of wickets that New Zealand lost, he got them. So you got to get him up front. They've experimented with Warren Chakravarti, which hasn't. He's bowled well enough, but hasn't got the wickets. And Bhuvaneshwar Kumar has struggled with form. He's the one guy that India look to get wickets up front with the new ball because he swings the ball. But he hasn't been in great form, and that hasn't helped. But they've got to find solutions because every team or the successful teams in these competitions have been guys who've got wickets up front because it just sets the game so much easier and makes life so much easier for the guys to follow. That you've got to find. I think Ashwin might help in that case. Seems to be bowling well at the moment, uh, and wickets are key in the first six. At least a wicket, if not two.
Yeah, particularly curious, Peter, that in this tournament where wickets seem to be falling in heaps in the power play in a number of games and teams almost need to rebuild, India, with all their experience and quality in the bowling, don't quite seem to get this right. Anything that you've noticed?
Uh, well, as Ajit just said, they're probably the form of Bovey is pretty big because he's a new ball bowler. He swings the new ball, and that hasn't quite been there. So, yeah, I haven't. It's not a huge sample size. This one tournament. I mean, there's every chance today they can turn that round a little bit against Scotland, but there's nothing I've noticed. But it does set your team back, doesn't it? If you can't get those early wickets, the opposition is set up for the innings. So it's an interesting stats and the fact that it's been perhaps going on for a period of time now for India is a concern, and they have to find that bowler who's the trump card in that first six, and whether that's Chakravarti or Bumrah, of course, he's world class. Maybe he hasn't been swinging the new ball as much, or maybe his lengths are a bit different. Whatever it is, it's a concern for India. If they are to progress in this tournament, obviously, and in T20 cricket moving forward, early wickets, everyone knows wickets in the power play set you up and win most T20 games.
We spent so much time talking about role clarity, Ajit, on teams, more with regards to batters. and how it's such an important thing. Do you think role clarity in bowlers is sometimes underspoken or almost underappreciated? There seem to be different bowlers taking the new ball in different games for India. Do you sense any kind of confusion at all with what India's bowlers' role is when it comes to bowling when in this Indian side?
I mean, it'll be nice to have a role. Ideally, T20 is so fluid at times that you've got to change with who you're playing. Sometimes the matchups come into play. Sometimes you can overthink, which ideally you don't want to do as a team. That can happen, but I don't see too much confusion. I think one of the things that I think I've spoken before as well, that Bumrah perhaps doesn't get used up front. They've started doing that now,
Yeah.
and it is needed. It is needed. He's your best bowler in the team. Even if you have a couple of spinners who can operate with the new ball or in the power play, uh, someone like Ashwin or a mystery with Varun Chakra, you still want to get a Bumrah up front when the batsmen are not set and everyone's trying to score quickly in the power play. Not when there are two set batsmen and then you're almost trying to bring him in the fifth or sixth over, where because you think it's an important over that the batsmen don't go hard. If you get them out earlier on, you won't have to do that. So I don't know whether there's confusion. I think sometimes IPL plays a bit of a part on how captains
Yes.
think. Some guys do well for their franchise. This is a little bit different when you comes to international cricket, and you've got to move with that. But I don't see any confusion. You've got to move with every game. It doesn't have to be absolutely set in stone. But if it's relatively consistent, then certainly helps the bowler's mindset as well.
Yeah, I think I was going to come to that just next. Whether adapting from the IPL to the World Cup in this particular case, because it was so quick, might have become a bit of a challenge. They all played different roles, fluid roles for their franchises. A lot of fans actually tend to associate their success with their franchise and think, are they bowling as well for India? Whether it's a Mohammad Shami, whether it's Shardul Thakur, who was so much better for CSK. How much do you think that's come into play here? The fact that they couldn't adapt from the role they played for their franchise to the role that they need to play for India.
I think they're experienced guys with a lot of T20 cricket behind them. So you should be able to adapt. You've got to remember here you're playing the best in the world in one team. It's like when as batsmen you're not facing two or three good bowlers which every franchise has, and there are a couple of weaklings where you can get after them. Here you're play you know every team has their best guys out there you're playing against. So there are no weak links. So you can't really. But I don't see any reason why they can't adapt because or they've not been able to because they bowl at different stages for their franchise as well. It's just that sometimes you might be the number one guy in a franchise and perhaps not be for your international team. That's perhaps the only thing. But they're quality performers. So it's just that India haven't batted well enough, and haven't given their
Yeah.
bowlers enough chance in this World Cup, unfortunately. So not getting wickets might be a little bit of a concern, but it's been India's batting which has let them down.
Absolutely. No two discussions on that. We must remind our viewers that we're discussing India's bowling because we have the opportunity. And honestly, we just want to do something different for a change. We've just been going so hard at India's batting for the first few games. So that's the reason we're looking at this. But Peter, I wonder if you had to objectively look at India's bowling and think for a World Cup, how many boxes does it tick? We heaped praise on Pakistan's bowling for the amount of variety it has. India don't play a wrist spinner anymore in their 11s. They have Rahul Chahar in the squad who came in ahead of Yuzvendra Chahal. They don't have Kuldeep Yadav, who's been part of their white ball setup. They now have a finger spinner in Jadeja, two more finger spinners now in Ashwin and Varun. Looking at just what they have to offer, do you think there's something missing, or do they fall short in terms of some of the other bowling attacks that we've seen successful in this World Cup?
Well, there's no left armour, and we've seen most of the teams with a proper left arm swing bowler with the new ball. That's obviously dangerous. That might be if we're looking for missing links. That might be something. Obviously, no wrist spinner, but the three spinners are very very different bowlers. So I wouldn't say that was necessarily a weakness. But if we're looking for something that they're missing, I'd say if you look at Shah Freddie or Trent Boult from Pakistan
Yeah.
or New Zealand, I think that left arm option, swinging the ball, that's something that perhaps India, if you're looking at the ideal T20 bowling attack, could be missing.
Okay, if I had to talk about identifying the right personnel for this World Cup now, Ajit, and we're just talking generic terms now, how India's campaign has gone is, again, we reiterate more for their batting. But they replaced Akshar Patel with Shardul Thakur. I'm trying to think of whether there was some lack of clarity on what your best bowling lineup was. There was obviously no left armour. There's a lot of talent that comes through the IPL. But did India pick their best bowlers going into this World Cup for you?
I thought so. I thought so. There was a lot of. I know Yuzvendra Chahal did well in the IPL, but before that, his form
Yeah.
wasn't good when he played for India. So people tend to just remember what they see, uh, in front of them. But when team was picked pretty early, that perhaps they could have waited. I'm not sure, but and maybe one spinner too many, which they rectified later because they were. I mean, if Hardik Pandya was not going to bowl, there was certainly a seamer shot with just Bumrah, Shami, and Bhuvaneshwar Kumar. So they got someone like a Shardul Thakur. He had a good tournament for Chennai. Uh, Maybe someone like a Deepak Chahar would have been perhaps a choice they could have looked at. I know he was in the standbys, but he's one guy when the ball swings gets wicket up front. In the IPL, it didn't swing and he struggled a little bit. But we've seen in this T20 World Cup the ball has swung. So apart from that, I don't see which bowler at the moment they could have replaced. Uh, just because someone did well in the IPL, then you may as well pick a team after the IPL because then I was quite happy when they stuck with the team that they had picked, and the seamer was logical because there were five spinners, and you were never going to use five spinners in this competition. So seamer was logical. Like, I don't know whether they picked the right one. Maybe Deepak Chahar would have been my choice to go to, but I think they looked at Shardul's batting and thought he might provide a bit of depth and bowl towards the end of the innings. So, but I thought the selections were fine. I mean, off spinner was the only thing. Washington Sundar, if fit, probably would have come in ahead of Ashwin, but Ashwin's done a really good job.
Yep, fair enough. It'll take a couple of games perhaps to change people's perceptions. Memories are will it when we discuss India's review more in detail once we know which way New Zealand and Afghanistan has gone. Let's focus a little bit on Scotland. They've been a disappointment, Peter. Fair to say that losing to Namibia would not have helped. There is a lot to play for in terms of making an impression, and what better team to make an impression in front of than India. Though I'm trying to think of where is the threat for Scotland. I asked you this last time too. No Josh Davy this time. They're missing a key bowler. They've lost the toss too. Perhaps a good thing that they could just go out and bat first because chasing didn't seem to be their cup of tea.
No, I mean they'll be disappointed. But what an occasion tonight is! This Friday night in Dubai. Hopefully there'll be a few Indian supporters in the ground. It's a big occasion, and this is for associate cricketers. This is as good as it gets. Playing India at a World Cup. I mean, it is huge. And if you look through their tournament so far, I've talked about their top five, top six batters being their strength. Well, we've got a bunch of guys there who've got the odd 18, 25. If you look at Munsey, Kutzer, Cross, McLeod, Berrington, they're all capable. They're all capable. None of them have had their day yet. So I'm hoping anyway, that this, I mean, on no better stage, that for at least one or two of those guys tonight, that they can show what they're really about. And this is the highest level, of course, against a magnificent Indian team. So what better night to do it? And those guys, they're much better than what they've shown so far in this tournament. Very capable. Richie Berrington, for me, we'll watch him tonight because that guy, he can seriously play. And I mean at this level. This is not a guy who just dominates associate level cricket. He can play at this level. Obviously it's difficult being T20 and you get a small window of opportunity. And tonight's one of those nights where you've got the window is big. There's plenty of people watching. So for me, Berrington tonight, you've got to watch him because he's a gun. We've got that lineup there. You've got Cross. He'll be at 3, one would presume. He did all right the other day. Still the same team. I would have thought maybe Alistair Evans wasn't great. There's some of the bowling against New Zealand the other day. They let them get away a little bit. But yeah, it's that batting lineup, and they're the ones that are going to be under the pump straight up. You've got George Munsey. He's played a few good shots, but he's only, I think his highest